Along the ancient Silk Road between Samarkand and Bukhara, there are ruins of countless caravanserais, fortified inns, where merchants once rested during their long journeys across the desert. Most are tourist attractions now, archaeological sites, places where guides tell sanitized stories about trade and culture. But there's one caravanserai that doesn't appear in any guidebook, one that only appears to travelers who are truly lost. The locals call it Yoqolgan Karvonsaroy, the Vanished Caravanserai, and if you're unlucky enough to spend the night there, you'll understand why some travelers never complete their journey. Rustam was a truck driver hauling textiles from Tashkent to Bukhara. He'd driven the route 100 times, knew every pothole, every checkpoint, every place to stop for tea. But that October night in 2019, everything went wrong. First, his GPS failed. Then his phone lost signal. The road signs seemed to contradict each other, pointing in impossible directions. A sandstorm rolled in from nowhere, reducing visibility to nothing. Rustam pulled over, deciding to wait out the storm. But the wind howled for hours and his fuel was running low. He couldn't keep the engine running all night. That's when he saw the lights. Through the swirling sand, he could make out the shape of a building, massive, ancient, with torches burning along its walls. A caravanserai preserved like something from a museum, or a mirage. Had to be a mirage, but the cold was seeping into his truck and the storm showed no sign of stopping. Rustam grabbed his jacket and ran toward the lights. The massive wooden gates were open, as if expecting him. Inside the courtyard, the storm seemed to vanish. The air was still warm, filled with the smell of cooking mud and wood smoke. The caravanserai was full of people. Merchants in traditional robes sat around fires, drinking tea from porcelain cups. Camels were tied in neat rows along the walls. Travelers spoke in languages Rustam half recognized: Persian, Arabic, Turkic dialects that sounded almost but not quite like modern Uzbek. An old man approached, his beard white as desert salt, his eyes sharp and knowing. "Welcome, traveler," he said in perfect Uzbek. "You look lost." "The storm," Rustam explained. "I need shelter for the night." "Of course, we always have room for one more." The old man gestured to an empty corner. "You may rest there. We have food if you're hungry. In exchange, we ask only that you share your story. What brings you across the desert?" It seemed reasonable. Rustam sat, accepted a bowl of plov, rice pilaf, with meat and carrots, still steaming hot. It was the best thing he'd tasted in months. Around the fire, other travelers shared their tales. A silk merchant from Khiva, a scholar from Baghdad, a warrior who claimed to serve the emir of Bukhara. Their stories were fascinating but strange. No one mentioned phones or cars. No one spoke of the modern world. They talked of bandits and sandstorms, of trade roads and camel trains, as if the 21st century hadn't happened. Rustam assumed they were historical or reenactors, or maybe he'd stumbled onto a film set. But as the night wore on, he began to notice details that didn't fit. The torches never diminished, the fire never needed more wood, and when people moved, they cast no shadows. Rustam tried to leave around midnight. He stood, thanked his hosts, and walked toward the gates. They were closed, massive, iron-bound, and locked from the outside. "The gates only open at dawn," the old man said from behind him. "For your safety. The desert at night is full of dangers." "What dangers?" "The divs, of course. The desert demons. They hunt travelers who wander alone in darkness. Here, inside the walls, you're protected. But out there," he gestured vaguely, "you'd be torn apart before you made it 50 paces. Rustam's phone was still dead. His truck was somewhere beyond those walls. buried in sand. He had no choice but to wait. He returned to his corner and tried to sleep, but the conversations around the fire kept him awake. The more he listened, the more disturbed he became. The silk merchant was discussing prices from 1850. The scholar was talking about books that had been lost in the Mongol invasions of the 13th century. The warrior was reminiscing about battles fought during the Emirate period, before the Russians came, before the Soviets, before Uzbekistan even existed as a nation. These weren't reenactors. These people were speaking from memory. Around 3 a.m., Rustam noticed something else. None of them blinked. None of them breathed. When they ate or drank, the food seemed to vanish without them actually swallowing, and their eyes, when the firelight caught them just right, reflected like an animal's eyes, like something that had adapted to darkness. Rustam stood slowly and backed toward the wall, his heart hammering. The old man looked up from his tea and smiled. "You've realized, haven't you?" "What are you?" Rustam whispered. "We were travelers once," the old man said. "Just like you, lost in the desert, desperate for shelter. And we found this place, just as you did." "How long ago?" The old man thought about it. "I arrived in the year of the horse, during the reign of Timur the Lame." "What year is it now in the outside world?" "Timur, Tamerlane, had ruled in the 14th century. You've been here for 600 years, more or less. Time moves differently here. A night inside can be a year outside, or a century. We've stopped counting." The old man set down his tea. "This caravanserai exists between moments, between breaths, between heartbeats. It's refuge from the desert, yes, but also a trap. Let me out. We can't. The gates are sealed by something older than us, older than this building. This place was built on cursed ground, a battlefield where thousands died, their spirits unable to move on. The Caravanserai was meant to be a blessing, a shelter, but it became a prison. Around the courtyard, the other travelers had stopped their conversations. They were all watching Rustam now, their reflecting eyes glowing in the firelight. "Every few decades," the old man continued, "a new traveler arrives, someone truly lost, whose absence won't be questioned too quickly, and they join us, because if they don't," he paused, "the diff comes." "What diff?" As if an answer, something howled outside the walls. Not a wolf, not a dog. Something deeper, older, hungrier. "The diff that guards this place," the old man said. "The diff that feeds on travelers who try to leave before dawn. The diff that keeps us trapped here, because as long as we stay inside, we are immortal, unchanging. But the moment we step outside those gates, another howl, closer now. The sound of claws scraping against stone. It takes us," the old man finished, "body and soul. Better to stay here, in this eternal night, than to be torn apart and scattered across the desert." Rustam had two options: stay and join the eternal guests, or risk the gates and the diff waiting outside. He thought of his family, his wife in Tashkent, his daughter starting university, his son who wanted to be a pilot. If he stayed here, would they even remember him? If time moved differently, would he emerge in a future where everyone he loved had died centuries ago? "I'm leaving," Rustam said. "You'll die," the old man warned. "Maybe, but at least I'll die trying to get home." He walked to the gates. They were massive, ancient, covered in symbols he didn't recognize, but they were also old, weathered, damaged by centuries of desert wind. Rustam was a truck driver. He knew physics, leverage, breaking points. He found a loose stone in the courtyard and used it to hammer at the weakest hinge. The other travelers watched but didn't help. They'd given up centuries ago. The howling outside grew louder, more excited. The diff knew what he was doing. After an hour of work, the hinge cracked. The gate swung slightly inward. "Last chance," the old man said. "Stay with us. It's not so bad. Once you accept it, we have food, fire, stories. We have immortality. You have nothing," Rustam said. You're already dead, you just haven't realized it. He squeezed through the gap in the gate and ran into the darkness. The div was waiting. Rustam couldn't see it clearly, just a shape in the sandstorm, massive and wrong, moving on too many legs with too many joints. Its breath smelled like rot and ancient death. Its eyes glowed with a sick greenish light. It lunged. Rustam ran blindly, stumbling through sand and rocks, no idea which direction was safety. The div was faster, always just behind him, toying with him, enjoying the hunt. He could feel it, reaching for him, claws scraping his jacket, breath hot on his neck. And then he saw it, his truck, half buried in sand, barely visible through the storm. Rustam dove for the driver's door, yanked it open, threw himself inside. The div's claw caught his leg, tearing through flesh, but he kicked free and slammed the door. The creature smashed against the truck, rocking it on its axles. Rustam turned the key, praying the engine would start. It coughed, died. The div's face pressed against the windshield. If it could be called a face, more like a void with teeth. Rustam tried again. The engine turned over. He threw the truck into gear and stomped the accelerator. The wheels spun in sand, then caught, and the truck lurched forward. The div chased him for miles, keeping pace impossibly. But as the first light of dawn broke over the desert, it fell back, shrieking, dissolving into the fading darkness. Rustam woke up in a hospital in Bukhara 3 days later. A shepherd had found him collapsed beside his truck, dehydrated and delirious, his leg badly torn. He'd been raving about caravanserais and demons and travelers from the 14th century. The doctors said it was heat exhaustion, hallucinations brought on by dehydration. The leg wound was from barbed wire, they said, or maybe a stray dog. Rustam didn't argue. He took his medication, called his family, and eventually went home. But sometimes, late at night, he'll wake up and swear he can hear it. The sound of travelers talking in ancient languages, the crackle of an eternal fire, the howling of something hungry in the darkness. And when he drives the route between Tashkent and Bukhara now, he never stops for anything, never pulls over in a storm, never trusts lights that appear where lights shouldn't be, because he knows the truth. The Vanished Caravanserai is still out there, waiting for the next lost traveler. And inside those walls, the guests are still sitting around their fire, still sharing stories, still trapped in a single endless night, still waiting for someone to free them or join them. In Uzbekistan, along the old Silk Road routes, there are stories the tour guides don't tell. Stories about places that exist between moments, about travelers who vanished without a trace, about lights in the desert that promise shelter but deliver something else entirely. The locals know, they've always known. That's why they tell you, if you're traveling at night and you see lights where no lights should be, keep driving. If you hear voices speaking languages older than memory, cover your ears. If you find a caravanserai that isn't on any map, no matter how desperate you are, no matter how cold or tired or lost, don't go inside, because the desert remembers everything, and some shelters aren't meant to protect you. They're meant to keep you forever.
Subscribe if you dare.